With the twin abduction in Kaduna State in just over a week, security agencies are yet to rescue the principal of the government technical secondary school located in Maraban Kajuru community in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. An incident that happened days after 45 suspects were arrested for kidnappings and other violent crimes. 27 assault rifles and 145 live ammunition were recovered. Is the security situation in Kaduna State getting better or is it getting worse? What more can the forces do to protect school children and students? Data feeds are coming through in one place simultaneously on all our social media networks, channelstv.com and on youtube.com/channelsweb. You can follow us right now on m.channelstv.com and on Facebook as well. We've got all our platforms on social media covered. Be part of the show. Tweet at Gimbo Umar CTV. Use the hashtag State of the Nation. Let's get your thoughts in. President Muhammad Buhari has presented a budget of 10.33 trillion naira to the National Assembly. The highlights of the budget was outlined by President Buhari, wherein the 2020 appropriation was based on some assumptions which he says will stir economic growth. A finance bill aims to promote fiscal discipline, introduce tax incentives for infrastructure, support SMEs, and increasing revenue for the government. The president says that the budget has a conservative oil price benchmark of $57 a barrel, daily oil production estimate of 2.88 million barrels per day, and an exchange rate of 305 naira to the dollar. We'll focus on this later on the show. The chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, PACAC, Professor Issa Sage, has said that the 8th National Assembly frustrated President Muhammad Buhari's government in the fight against corruption. He said this on Thursday after members of his committee met with President Buhari at the presidential villa in Abuja. In his words, "I am happy to say that the capacity of corruption to fight back has been reduced with the expiration of the life of the 8th Assembly." What is the PACAC chairman telling us? Are all sides covered by PACAC in arriving at that conclusion? Is the anti-corruption war succeeding? It's prime time here in Lagos, and this is State of the Nation. Hello everyone in Nigeria and the rest of the world. I am Gimbo Umar and this is State of the Nation. Let's turn our attention to the war on corruption, shall we? The chairman of the Presidential Advisory Committee Against Corruption, PACAC, Professor Issa Sage, yesterday said that the 8th Assembly frustrated President Muhammad Buhari's government in the fight against corruption. He was speaking after members of his committee met with President Buhari at the presidential villa in Abuja. Let's analyze some of his submissions further. I'm now being joined by a lawyer, Barrister Tochukwu Ohazurike. He joins me from our Abuja studios. Many thanks indeed for joining us at this time. That stance by PACAC chairman, Professor Sage, is that the 8th Assembly was a clog in the wheels of progress. These are his specific words. Everything they could do to frustrate the federal government and ourselves in this, they did. They did, and the 8th Assembly is now out of the way. What do you make of the submissions of Professor Sage?
Well, thank you and good evening, Gimba. Good evening, Nigerians. I think Professor Sake was just being political in the statement he made. He wasn't actually saying the facts of it. And the statements he made actually looked like a man who discovered that his committee had been off the news for a while, had opportunity of meeting with the president, and then went full swing to put himself back in media space. And you can see that all through today, all the media houses, all the newspapers had him as their headline stories. That's basically what happened. Because it wasn't true. There were a lot of bills. There were no. Could he go into the specifics? He did not go into the specifics of the bills that were supposed to have been passed by the National Assembly that were not passed. Did he mention any specifics of anything done by the 8th National Assembly to stop the president from his anti-corruption war? He did not mention any. He just made a blank statement and wants Nigerians to take it like that. It is for the media to put it back to him, to mention the specifics of the actions taken by the 8th Assembly, which stopped the anti-corruption war, because there were a lot of things that were done, even if it was the budget. I think the earliest the president presented the budget to the 8th Assembly was sometime in November. I mean, most of them were in December. None was presented in October like it has just been done. And you don't take such actions, present this budget in December, expect the National Assembly to pass it in November. And very many of the claims he made were false claims, including the achievements of recovering 1 trillion naira, which was plowed into the social intervention program. All those are false claims. Because if you look at the MTEF report of 2019, 350 billion was allocated for social intervention program. From that report, you will also discover that only 271 billion was released. That is government record. But Professor Isesage comes out yesterday and says 500 billion of 1 trillion he recovered was put into the 2018 social intervention program. So it's either the government record of 271 billion naira release for social intervention program is wrong, or Professor Isesage is wrong. But that release wasn't made for any purpose apart from putting himself back in the media space, and he has just succeeded in doing that. So that is the extent of relevance Nigeria should accord the statements he made yesterday, and nothing more. It was not factual, it was not based on any specifics, because for all the claims he made, he did not say the source of his information, he did not back it up with any data or any sources of credible sources of information for Nigerians to rely on it, and Nigerians definitely will not rely on it.
Does it surprise you, though, because there was some part that he was a little bit specific, if you will, consider it as such. When he said that at that time, in the 8th Assembly, it did not depend on which party you belong to. They all ganged up together against the fight against corruption. This obviously is referring to the APC and the PDP, who are always at loggerheads. If that were the case, what then can be said about the 8th Assembly that perhaps passed the highest bills, if you will, in the history of our democratic history?
The Professor Tahiru Jega report, presented just about a couple of weeks or less ago, showed that the 8th Assembly was the most productive National Assembly we had had in our history. And Professor Isesage says that the 8th Assembly stopped the president from his fights. If that was true, and he would have ordinarily, in the course of making his statement, given instances, but he did not give any instances. Now, the 8th Assembly, the leader, okay, let's even remember the fact that everybody in the leadership of the 9th Assembly was in the 8th Assembly. The Senate President, the Deputy Senate President, the Speaker, and the Deputy Speaker were all principal officers in that 8th Assembly. So, if you now say condemn the 8th Assembly and you now repose so much confidence in the 9th Assembly, what have you succeeded in doing? You have only succeeded in saying that the 8th Assembly should continue, the 9th Assembly would do basically the same things that the 8th Assembly did. And if you also recall the fact that the PACAC, the Presidential Advisory Committee against anti-corruption, does not have prosecutorial powers, does not have investigative powers. It's just to advise. And he claims he recovered 1 trillion locally, internally from Nigeria. He forgets that the Abacha loot, the $322 million Abacha loot that was brought back to the country, was also invested in the same social intervention program. Yet, MTEF records that $271 billion was released. That's $322 million from Abacha loot in that same place. And he now says his own $500 billion in the same place. And the records from government show that only $271 billion was released. So you can just see that I've stated the facts to show that the man needed to put himself back in the news. And that was all he achieved with what happened yesterday. And it's unfortunate that issues of corruption are now used to get attention in the media space. And it's unfortunate that that is what has happened.
In your estimation,
that committee has not.
My apologies. In your estimation, when you look at the statistics that we're getting from international bodies that has rated Nigeria, scored Nigeria, as a matter of fact, 25 over 100 in terms of the corruption perception index, does that give you a sense that we're headed the right direction when it comes to corruption fighting, which is one of the cardinal agenda of this administration?
The best way to have described the anti-corruption fight so far between 2015 and today is the description given to it by Senator Sheikh Hussaini, who said, when it is for somebody who is outside the government, you treat it with insecticide, but for anybody within the government, you treat it with deodorant. That is the best description that can be given. And it is not, Nigeria is not on the pathway to the right direction, because corruption present corruption in government is worse than past corruption in past government. Not in volume or quantum, but the impact of any corruption in any present government, not just for the government of today, at any particular time. Corruption in any particular government at that time is worse and will have more negative impact than any corruption in any previous government. So to that extent, we now see issues of corruption at the highest level and the levity with which government treats them.
So on what statistics, on what statistics are you relying on? What statistics are you relying on to come to that conclusion?
That the impact of corruption for any present government. Now, if there is corruption today for any money that has been allocated for any infrastructure or any project today, and it is looted today, the impact of it is worse because the past cannot be worse than the present. It's as simple as that. You don't need international organizations. It's statistics. It's commonsensical to know that anything that happens now, any crime that happens now is worse than any crime that happened in the past. Anything that happens good, anything that happens well now is better than what happened well previously. It's simple calculation.
Okay,
it's simple
if that's your submission, if that is your submission, then perhaps the EFCC chairman will disagree with you, because just days ago he also came out to say that there will be no free lunch for anybody. As a matter of fact, what he said in his words is that nobody will be under any kind of protection. If you are corrupt, he will fish you out whatsoever. It doesn't have to do with party or any affiliation or any organization or any group. He's out there to get you if you're corruptly stealing from this country. Does that give you a sense of comfort?
No. From 2015 till date, or let's start from the date Ibrahim Magu assumed office as the chairman of EFCC. The question we'll ask him is, how many people that are in government has he stopped from corruption? Has he arrested? None, except he wants to tell Nigerians that there has been no looting since the day he was appointed as chairman of EFCC.
But you cannot say that there are no people.
So
there are people in the political sphere. There are people in the political sphere who are all still in court as we speak at this moment, that are still undergoing corruption trials.
Let's mention their names.
Are you aware of that? Are you aware of that?
That's why I say mention their names and let's take it up immediately.
But you know, the former PDP publicity secretary is still in court about this very corruption case. You know that. You know the NSA is also there.
Former Secretary SGF started. Where is his trial? Where is his trial? It happened, and 10 months after it happened, he was still in office until he was removed by until he was suspended by the acting president. Then the president actually gave him a clean bill of health to say that his right to fair hearing was denied by the Senate before action was taken on him. And after that happened, what next? Where is his trial?
Mr. Ohazurike, you are not saying that the fight against corruption is a hoax, is it?
EFCC did not. What was the contribution of EFCC to the exposition of the corruption trial? None. It was the Senate that did that. EFCC was there because EFCC couldn't have looked David Babachir Lawal in the face to tell him they were going to investigate him. They couldn't do that. As secretary to the government, they did not have the muscles. They didn't have the balls to do that. So it's simple. Well, see, EFCC, when it sees Yahoo boys, EFCC goes on rampage. They are good at that. If there's a way it can be said that Ibrahim Magu should focus on Yahoo boys, I can tell you he will catch a lot of them. But if it's about corruption in government, no, he does not know what to do about that. He doesn't have the simplest or ideas about how to stop corruption.
Barrister Tochukwu Ohazurike, many thanks indeed for talking to us on this very important topic of corruption and the war against it. Many thanks indeed for talking to us.